So why are so many people led to believe this way? These myths say you need to eat lots of protein to be healthy, and the source of that protein is meat and dairy. And why are so many of us overly concerned with protein intake these days? This is probably caused by the meat and dairy industries starting decades ago in order to increase people's consumption of these animal-based foods. This means more money for these industries, which are businesses being run for profit. These ideas have probably come from clever marketing, such as the "milk does a body good" ad campaigns, and from something known as food politics, where our basic understanding of nutrition is influenced even as high as at the government level, where lobbying has taken place. Think of the classic food pyramid as an example of this. We were told this was healthy, yet new research shows that this was a lot of misinformation provided in these guidelines. And what about the supplement industry? Wouldn't they stand to profit too by convincing people that they need more protein than they do? Look at protein shakes, which are usually a byproduct of the dairy industry, which would normally be thrown away but instead can be sold for massive profits. With protein powder being sold anywhere from $30 to $50 per bottle or more, this is a massive multi-billion-dollar industry which is only growing larger. What should we believe then? Is there something we could look at that would give us clues to all this? Let's first have a look at nature. Animals haven't been influenced by marketing, so maybe they can give us some ideas or clues. We know that all animals need protein in order to survive. So would that mean that all animals need to eat meat or dairy then? Well, there are animals that eat no meat or animal-based foods. These animals eat only plants in their diet. They're known as herbivores. But maybe these are just weak and slow animals, like a sloth. Well, not quite. Actually, some of the strongest and most active animals eat only plants. This includes horses, bulls, elephants, panda bears, deer, hippos, bisons, even gorillas. Yes, even the gorilla, which can weigh 300 to 500 pounds, most of that being pure muscle, with a strength 6 to 15 times that of a human, eats a vegetarian or plant-based diet. So where is all of his protein coming from if he only eats plants and no meat or dairy? What this tells us is that they must be getting their protein from somewhere, and this source is actually plants. In fact, all plant-based foods have protein, despite the fact that they are commonly labeled as being only carbs. This even includes vegetables. In fact, go to your freezer or frozen food section in the supermarket, pull out a bag of frozen broccoli, peas, or spinach, look at the nutrition label, and you will see that protein is actually in these foods. This protein is also found in all other natural plant-based foods, including nuts, whole grains, beans, and even fruit. Yes, protein's even found in fruit. However, it is usually found in a much lower amount, but it is still there. Take these raisins, for example. If we look at the nutrition label, we can see that protein is actually there and present, although it's at a very low amount. But some other plant-based foods, which have commonly been referred to as carb foods, actually have a decent amount of protein in them, including potatoes, rice, and bread. Bread actually has 4 to 5 grams of protein per slice. This will usually give you almost 10 grams of protein added to any sandwich you make. You may have even heard of soy protein, which is popular in the fitness community and used to be as popular as whey protein, this is a protein that comes entirely from soybeans. There is another plant-based protein which is becoming popular. This is pea protein. It's derived entirely from the protein that comes from peas. This means that when you're eating plant-based foods all day long, you're constantly getting protein, which is adding up throughout the day. This is exactly how animals in the wild who eat only plant-based foods can get their protein needs met. This brings us to myth number 1, that plant-based foods don't have protein and are usually just carbs. We see this is incorrect in that all natural plant-based foods have protein in them. Another common misconception about plant-based foods is that they are a source of incomplete protein, whereas animal-based foods are a source of complete protein. This is not true, as even this research paper shows that all plant-based foods contain all 20 amino acids, including the 9 essential amino acids, making them complete protein sources. This misbelief may come from the fact that when looking at individual plant-based foods, one food may have a lower than optimal level of an essential amino acid, and another food may have a lower level of a different essential amino acid. And while this might seem like a problem, this is not a problem, because in a standard balanced diet where you're eating many different plant-based foods, whatever essential amino acid is lower in one food will be made up for and provided by another food. For example, the essential amino acid lysine is found in lower than optimal rates in grains such as rice, and sulfur amino acids are found in lower than optimal rates in beans. But when beans and rice are eaten in the diet, then the essential amino acid that is lacking in rice will be provided by the beans, and the essential amino acids that are lacking in the beans will be provided by the rice. So unless you are eating a diet of only one plant-based food, such as just rice all day long or just beans, this may be a problem. But almost all people eat many different foods throughout the day, even in the same meals, such as rice and beans being combined together, meaning that these foods will work together and make up for any essential amino acid that might be lacking in one of the foods. It will be supplied by another food. And you don't even have to eat these different plant-based foods in the same meal. As long as they are eaten throughout the day or even over the course of days in your diet, you will be fine. This brings us to the truth that plant-based foods are a source of complete protein. They contain all 20 amino acids and all 9 essential amino acids and provide a sufficient amount as long as they are eaten as a variety. Next, someone may be thinking, well, plant-based foods do have protein, but animals that eat these foods may have different digestive systems than ours. So maybe that wouldn't work for us. In the case of some animals like the cow, this is true. They do have a quite different digestive system than ours. However, the gorilla has the digestive system that is most closely related to a human. But we'll be fair and say maybe there are differences that allow them to thrive on this protein that wouldn't work for a human. Are there cases of humans who eat only plant-based foods that do well? Let's look at that next. There has been research done to identify the areas of the world with the longest living people. The 20 years of research found that there were 5 groups worldwide that had the healthiest and longest living people, and these came to be known as the blue zones. The study found there were many different lifestyle habits that contributed to the longevity and health of these groups. What's interesting though is they all had very similar dietary habits of eating little to no meat or animal-based foods. In essence, they ate plant-based diets. In one of these groups, the Seventh-day Adventists in California eat no meat at all and are vegetarians. What this shows us is that this group of plant-based vegetarians, despite not eating any meat, are not only active and healthy, but are also some of the longest living and healthiest people in the world. So this at least tells us that humans cannot eat meat and still live healthy and active lives. And this opens up the possibility that not eating meat or eating plant-based could potentially lead to living a longer and healthier life. But we don't want to look at just one case or study when drawing conclusions. But also remember that the blue zones included 4 other groups that also ate plant-based and ended up living longer and healthier lives as well. Plus, we have lots of research now showing that plant-based diets or eliminating or minimizing meat and animal products actually do lead to healthier and longer outcomes for humans. With this study showing that vegetarian diets are associated with lower mortality rates, and another new study showing that eating plant-based foods could increase lifespan by up to 13 years. Plus, there's other research that has been done, such as the China Cornell Oxford project. This dispels the myth that eating meat is necessary for our health. The truth being that groups that eat little to no meat live the longest and healthiest lives, and research shows that eliminating meat leads to longer and healthier lives. Also, is there any evidence that humans get enough protein on a plant-based diet? Well, remember the Seventh-day Adventist vegetarians? This study showed the total protein intake for these vegetarians was almost the same as the non-vegetarians or meat eaters. This was even the same for the vegans, who also had similar protein levels to all the groups, including the non-vegans. And you can see that these similar levels of protein were coming from plant-based foods. Another study found vegans and vegetarians getting slightly less protein than meat eaters. However, the difference was not dramatic. The meat eaters were getting 17% of their energy from protein, compared to 13% for the vegans and 14% for the vegetarians. One of the possible reasons for the slightly lower protein intake in this study compared to the Seventh-day Adventist study was that the Seventh-day Adventists may be eating more of a whole food plant-based diet, which will give a higher level of protein than processed foods might. In processed foods, more calories may be coming from oils and sugar, both of which provide no protein, whereas whole natural foods will naturally have higher protein, as we saw earlier. However, many of the newer vegan and plant-based processed foods, such as the plant-based meats, are beginning to add more protein into the foods, meaning those eating these foods more in the future may be getting higher protein levels than seen in the study, even from processed foods. But even looking at lower protein intakes as seen in the second study, is this enough for plant-based eaters to get enough protein for their daily needs? Well, first let's consider that protein intake has increased dramatically in recent times, especially in the Western countries. This means that the baseline in which these vegetarians and vegans are being compared is much higher than it's been in the past. For adults in Western countries, the average protein intake per day is about twice the estimated average requirement. For the Seventh-day Adventist groups who are getting almost as much protein as the meat eaters, we know that this is plenty of protein for their health. And in the second study, which had lower protein intake for vegetarians and vegans, the average protein intake for these vegetarians and vegans was still around 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day, which is a good amount above the recommended 0.8 grams per kilogram per day and twice the amount of the estimated average requirement. So it's good to find out that the vast majority of plant-based eaters actually do get enough protein on a plant-based diet. However, we still will address the fact that in this study there was a slightly higher percentage of vegans and vegetarians that were classified as being protein deficient. Even though it was a very minimal difference anyway, there are still some explanations as to why it might have been happening and some ways to prevent it. First, there may have been reporting errors with the amount of protein being underestimated, especially with plant-based foods. Second, individuals who are not getting enough protein may have just been the result of them not getting enough calories. Basically, they were in a calorie deficit, either through dieting or for whatever reason. So what would record as a protein deficiency is just the result of not getting enough calories overall. Third, it may be that these people eating plant-based may be neglecting some of the higher protein plant-based foods, such as beans, nuts, or even plant-based meats. As we saw with the Seventh-day Adventists, they were eating plenty of whole foods, such as beans, in their diet. In fact, beans have always historically been a staple where meat has not been consumed as much. However, now in the Western countries, beans are being consumed less and less. Beans are a great source of plant-based protein and should definitely be added to any plant-based diet to get maximum protein intake. This brings us to the next truth, that the vast majority of people get enough protein on a plant-based diet, exceeding the recommended amounts. And in the rare cases where this doesn't happen, certain eating strategies can be used to correct this. One final concern that some people have is the bioavailability of plant-based proteins in humans. Basically, there have been concerns that plant-based proteins are not digested and absorbed as well by humans as animal proteins are. This means that even if you're eating the same amount of protein, it may not be used by the body as well. This idea probably came from some past research that indicated that plant proteins might have a much lower digestibility in humans than animal proteins. However, the newer and more accurate research has shown almost no difference between the digestibility of animal proteins versus plant proteins, with the difference being only a small percentage. And this was still seen even with the plant-based proteins being in less than optimal conditions in the study. Which presents the next common myth, that plant-based proteins are not digested as well by humans as animal proteins. We saw that new research shows this is not true, and that animal proteins and plant-based proteins are almost equally digestible or bioavailable. So we've seen that plant-based foods have plenty of protein, and that humans on a plant-based diet are able to get enough protein to be healthy, and actually a lot of those on a plant-based diet are even healthier and live longer lives. But what about athletes, or even those trying to maximize muscle growth or strength? Would a plant-based diet work for them? Athletes have always been told that they must get lots and lots of protein, usually in the form of meat or dairy, and that this will maximize their performance or muscle growth. However, even though this was always common belief, we are now seeing many plant-based and even vegan athletes who are performing extremely well on a plant-based diet. This even includes famous names such as Tom Brady, Venus and Serena Williams, NFL stars and players such as Cam Newton and the Tennessee Titans defensive players, U.S. Olympic gold medal winners, powerlifting world champions, and more. And many of these athletes have even improved their performance once going plant-based and have set new records. So we see that eating meat or animal-based foods is not a requirement for building muscle, strength, or for athletic performance. And eating plant-based might even give an advantage in athletic performance, which we'll look at later. In fact, many recent studies have found that eating a vegetarian or plant-based diet gives similar athletic performance results as to eating an omnivorous diet. This includes similar gains in muscle size and strength as long as adequate protein is being consumed, and it's been found the source of this protein makes no difference whether it's animal-based or plant-based. The only thing that matters is whether you're getting enough protein and not the source of the protein. Which gives further evidence to what was mentioned earlier, that plant-based proteins are just as bioavailable as animal proteins. Some studies have even found an improvement in endurance performance on a plant-based diet, which might explain how some of these athletes are setting new records and performing their best on a plant-based diet. One of the reasons for this may be that plant-based foods provide lots of antioxidants that animal-based foods do not provide. These antioxidants help to eliminate free radicals and stress and damage that is caused by exercise. This means faster recovery times after exercise, which will lead to an advantage in the long run. So we know that we can build just as much muscle on a plant-based diet as long as we are getting enough protein, and the source of that protein doesn't matter. And plant-based proteins may have additional benefits for performance. As a leading bodybuilding researcher, Eric Helms has said, there's no reason a well-designed vegan or vegetarian diet can't be just as effective as a diet that includes meat. So if you're an athlete on a plant-based diet, you need to focus on what you're eating in order to get enough protein. The first step is to make sure you're eating enough calories. This ensures adequate muscle growth. Bodybuilders and athletes will even eat in excess of calories known as bulking. The second step is to make sure you are eating high-protein plant-based foods such as tofu, beans, nuts, quinoa, and whole grains. Whole foods are also a key, as we saw from the Seventh-day Adventists that they were getting as much protein as the omnivores. And if you want to maximize protein intake and make sure you are getting enough, you may also want to do a plant-based protein supplement, such as a soy protein powder or pea protein powder. In fact, one study actually found that pea protein outperformed whey protein for muscle growth. Also, soy milk is a great plant-based alternative to regular milk and provides roughly the same amount of protein. Although we won't go into any more detail, in further videos we'll explore how you can build muscle on a plant-based diet. For now, we've seen that plant-based foods provide protein, and that protein is available to humans, We've also seen that plant-based foods provide complete amino acids, and we've learned that humans eating a plant-based diet generally get enough protein and are healthy and generally are healthier and longer living than the rest of the population. We've also seen that athletes on a plant-based diet are excelling and even exceeding their old records and are performing well. Now it's time to start eating plant-based for your longevity, wellness, and health. Check the description for free guides, resources, and helpful products. Remember to subscribe to get updates to new videos.